What up, fam? Hey, everybody in Luqman Nation, the most dangerous show on social media, on the most dangerous platform on social media, Black Power Media. If you're watching on Black Power Media, that is, and I hope you are. Hey, everybody, it's Jacquie Luqman, and welcome to another episode of People's Power Lunch with me, People's Prophetess, Jacquie Luqman. Thanks so much for joining me on this Monday, June 20th. Good grief, this month is almost over. I don't even know what to say about that. It's been crazy. And I know it's Juneteenth, the official federally recognized holiday for Juneteenth. So many of you may be watching at home instead of at work. And we're going to talk about Juneteenth in a minute. But before we get started, I wanted to share this video with you that has been bringing me so much joy, almost as much joy as the chairs flying, the chairs in flight video with Juan Guaido, and it's this one. I mean, honestly, he didn't really fall off his bike. He literally just like toppled over while he was stopped. I don't even understand how that happened. But yeah, I've been enjoying that. I've been enjoying that quite a bit, and I shouldn't laugh because I was just telling the show's host and my comrade Sean Blackman today that I need to relearn how to ride a bike, and he said, well, you know, they say you never forget. I'm like, yeah, I don't trust that. Gravity has not been my friend over the past few decades, and I would probably do just as badly as old creepy Uncle Joe trying to get off or on a bike. But I just thought that was amusing that he was trying to show how vigorous he is, and he can't even stop the bike without falling over. That's very interesting. So, all right, now let's see who's hanging out here in the lunchroom with us. Franny French, how you doing? Emma, Kamari, Holly Horn, my written voice, John Kester, all day, what's going on? Goddess Crew, what's happening? Marley Gordon, Big Teal, Eugene Mason, Savvy Sav, what's happening? Comrade Kwame, good to see you. Let's going down. Thanks for coming out and hanging out with me in the lunchroom for the People's Power Lunch today, y'all. So let's talk about Juneteenth, shall we? Because, you know, I I'm not against a federal holiday. I'm not against a day off work. Lord knows I'm not. If anybody should be getting a day off work, it's us. We should get quite a few days off work just because it's Tuesday, because it's Friday, just because. But you know, Juneteenth, the federally recognized holiday of Juneteenth, is problematic for a couple of reasons. First of all, because it's not universally recognized across the country. It is not a universal, every state is not recognizing Juneteenth as a paid federal holiday. And this is, I'm going to share this with you and show you the states that are.
mentioned, Juneteenth has been a federal holiday for 1 year now, but most states have yet to make it their own legal holiday. Only a handful of states have Juneteenth holidays with paid time off for state employees. 8 states, including Georgia, as you see there, have elevated Juneteenth to a paid state holiday in the last year. The education about Juneteenth continued today as well with the Atlanta History Center's Jubilee on the Lawn. The event allowed people to explore the history of holiday, Black innovation, life, and excellence since emancipation right here in the city of Atlanta.
Okay, yeah, that's in Atlanta, and I will stop right there because I really this whole focusing on Black excellence and focusing on the culture when we're talking about Juneteenth is a serious problem. So first, the fact that Juneteenth is not recognized in every state as a paid federal holiday. And it is not recognized even in the states that do recognize it as a paid federal holiday. All private corporations don't recognize. So not everybody gets a paid day off for Juneteenth. Not everybody even gets a day off for Juneteenth, which, that's I mean, a day off is like the lowest in the just but um it's interesting though that the way Juneteenth is being recognized across the country as a federal holiday is almost kind of the way the Emancipation Proclamation was even implemented in the first place, which I think that's very interesting. So here's what I wish that we would not allow to happen with Juneteenth, but it's already happening. So I think we have to redouble our efforts to, as our comrades over at Hood Communist and Ajamu Umi in particular said, we need to reclaim Juneteenth. Don't let these politicians and these corporations turn this into some whitewashed, feel good, picnic in the park, getting free barbershops and talking about the culture kind of garbage that has happened. So here's what we need to know about Juneteenth that just here's what we need to know about Juneteenth. So first of all, people get this wrong that Juneteenth is the day that the enslaved in Galveston, Texas, or in Texas at all found out that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and that the war was over. That's bullshit. Everybody knew that on January 1, 1863, that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. Everybody knew when the Civil War ended. Everything white people knew, the enslaved knew. That I don't understand. I don't get how we understand that Africans and their descendants who were enslaved had very complex and expansive nationwide communication networks where they could get people free and they could, transmit information between communities. They would find each other. How do you figure they didn't know? Working around all of these white people, how did you figure they did not know that all this other stuff was? Of course they knew. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed on January 1st in 1863, and when the Civil War ended, they knew. But they also knew that Union troops had not reached Galveston. They had not reached Texas yet. So even though the war was over in 1863, it took 2 years for the Union troops to eventually get to Texas. So it wasn't that the enslaved in Texas didn't know that the war was over and they were free. They knew that there was no one in Texas who could enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. They knew that there was no one to make the slave owners set them free, leave them alone, let them go about their business. So they bided their time, knowing that the Union soldiers were eventually on their way. And eventually they got there to Galveston 2 years later and literally had to force the slave owners in Galveston and in Texas to stop enslaving people, literally by gunpoint. So this idea that slavery just kind of ended when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and the Civil War was over and all the slave owners were like, okay, well, that's over with. Go on about your business. That's not, no, that's not. So, um, I hope that's not a serious question, Emma. About arming the slaves. First of all, let's talk about Abraham Lincoln, because people like to present Abraham Lincoln as the great emancipator. He really wasn't. At the beginning of the war, Lincoln was ordering that enslaved people who escaped to the Union Army would should be returned to their enslavers. Yeah, that was Abraham Lincoln. At the beginning of the war, enslaved people were like, we've been fighting for our freedom this whole time. Why not just go and help these Union soldiers who finally got around to joining the fight? And Abraham Lincoln's response was, no, no, you are the legal property of those people who enslaved you. Go right back. And then Lincoln basically had to be forced to create a colored regiment, a few of them, because of the overwhelming exodus of formerly enslaved people. He did not want to arm the formerly enslaved people. He didn't want to enslave. He didn't want to arm the Africans. He didn't. But he would have lost the war. The Union would have lost the war had he not done that. He was literally forced to, because the Union Army their resources were being depleted, and the Africans kept coming. So he's like, fine, fine, we'll arm the formerly enslaved people. We'll arm the Africans, and that really was the tide that was turned in the war. That and Harriet Tubman. Yeah, I talked about that. Harriet, and how she was a very crucial spy for the Union soldiers. And were it not for her, a lot of information about Confederate batteries and outposts would not have been transmitted to the Union Army. And a lot of those folks who were formerly enslaved wouldn't have made it to the Union side to join the colored regiments in the Union Army. So Abraham Lincoln was not like, I'm trying to free the slaves. I'm doing this because I want to free the slaves. So let me tell you what Abraham Lincoln said specifically about emancipation and why he did it. In a letter that he wrote to New York Tribune editor Horace Greeley in August of 1862, this is before the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, mind you, Abraham Lincoln wrote, quote, "My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union, and is not either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and the colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save the Union." Abraham Lincoln was very extremely crystal clear about him really not giving a damn about what happened with slavery. Oh, he talked about, oh, yeah, I would that all men were free. But for real, he really just wanted a united States of America. He wanted to save the Union, to the point where, as I said, at the beginning of the war, he wanted to appease the Southern states so much. He wanted them to come back to the Union so much that he was like, fine, keep your slaves. And when the enslaved escape and try to join the Union Army, I'll send them back. So then, understanding that that's how Abraham Lincoln felt about saving the Union, and him really not caring about ending slavery, honestly. When you understand that the Emancipation Proclamation only applied to the states that had already seceded, so then you understand why it mattered that Lincoln's entire objective was really to save the Union. It was not to free the slaves, and Lincoln ain't free no slaves anyway, because our ancestors freed themselves. But the Emancipation Proclamation applied only to those southern states that had already seceded. The northern and midwestern states, Missouri, um, Maryland, let me see, Delaware, and what's the other one? What's the other one? I wrote it down. Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri. They were slaveholding states, but they were also loyal to the Union. They were Union states also. So the Emancipation Proclamation did not apply to those four states, which were slaveholding states. So the enslaved people in Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri were not emancipated by the Emancipation Proclamation. Only those people who were enslaved in the southern states that had already seceded, that were under control of the Confederacy. And even the southern states that had already fallen to the Union Army, they weren't included in the Emancipation Proclamation either. And on top of all of that, the Emancipation Proclamation could not have been enforced without the force of the Union Army. So that's where that 2 years comes into play, with the Emancipation Proclamation being signed and it finally being enforced in Galveston, Texas, because that's how long it took the Union Army to get their stuff together after, kicking the Confederates behind, and eventually making their way to Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation in Texas. So, oh, that's right. We were dragging Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. So the other thing that we need to know about Abraham Lincoln, particularly on Juneteenth, because I wish people would stop bringing that man's name up on Juneteenth. I know he is a part of this history, but this is the same person, Mr. I don't really care whether I end slavery or not. That's not even why I'm doing this. I don't care. I just care about the Union. Um, Also signed a bill. This is, and I actually did not know this until I was kind of doing a little bit of reading myself. Abraham Lincoln signed a bill in 1862 that ended slavery in the District of Columbia. People always ask, was DC a slave territory? Yes, it was. Um, and on April 16th of 1862, he signed a bill ending slavery in the District of Columbia. And that did provide for the immediate emancipation for the enslaved. But get this, it provided for compensation for not the enslaved, but for the former slave owners who were loyal to the Union. Abraham Lincoln signed that order before, a few months before he signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. The former slave owners of the District of Columbia were given $300 for each freed slave. Now, there's supposed to be a provision. Well, there was a provision in the law that would give $100 to each formerly enslaved person who chose to immigrate to a location outside of the U.S., which was Africa, or somewhere in Haiti. Why is that important? Because that's where we came from. Number one, that's where we were stole from. And number two, that is where the countries that were complicit in the triangular human trafficking trade had colonized in order to carry out the triangular human trafficking trade. British colonies, the Britain had established colonies in Africa. The Dutch had established colonies in Africa. All of the European powers that were involved in the triangular human trafficking trade had colonies on the continent and were involved in plantation slave systems in the Caribbean. Yeah, uh huh. So Abraham Lincoln was trying to set up this scheme to basically, um, some people like to say, oh, resettle or repatriate. No, he was a colonizer. He was trying to send us back to Africa, but back to the colonies that existed now on the continent that had been established by the colonialists, by the colonizers who were complicit in the triangular trade. But it didn't work out. Negotiations with Britain and the Dutch to do that didn't work out, and there was one one, like, I guess it was a pilot project that he carried out, actually even the year before that, the year before he signed, no, I'm sorry, later on in 1862, in December of 1862, the day before he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, he signed an order that sent 500 formerly enslaved people to Haiti, to a small island in Haiti in 1863. He did this on the day before he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Um, there was $100,000 set aside for the resettlement, colonization of formerly enslaved people, on in this instance Haiti, but the colonizing Europeans and their collaborators basically stole the money. And all of the provisions that were supposed to either go with or follow that 500 formerly enslaved folks, our ancestors, our Africans, to Haiti, didn't make it. Um, they did not have adequate provisions, obviously, on the ship over there, so they suffered an outbreak of smallpox and malnourishment when they got there because they had no provisions. They suffered more disease and hunger, and the money with the $100,000 was stolen, no provisions, so they had to be rescued in 1865. Yeah. So, and that is important to know because, um in terms of compensation, when we're talking about the end of slavery, um getting rid of us, sending us back to where we were stolen from, really was the only compensation people agreed on in this country and in the other colonies. And then in the end they didn't even agree on that because they no one wanted to take on the financial burden of now Africans that they could not legally enslave. See, they had to pay us to work and they didn't want to do it. Yeah, so basically, the former slave owners of the District of Columbia got what, like almost $1 million in 1863 money, which, don't ask me how much that is now, or 1862 money. Don't ask me how much that is now. It's a hell of a lot of money now. And the formerly enslaved people, around 3,000 of them, got not a dime, nothing. Okay, so I think we have appropriately dragged Abraham Lincoln and disabused people of this idea that he is or ever was some kind of great emancipator. He did not free any slaves. Our ancestors freed themselves. They were not slaves. They were Africans who were enslaved by Europeans and their descendants. And then it's interesting that the government of the United States, the newly United States after the war and after the Union won the war and the states were all united again, the Union was once again whole. It's interesting that they had no problem negotiating with Britain, their former colonial masters that they went to war with, allegedly to get from under the yoke of the British, their British colonial masters, and the Dutch, the other colonizers who had colonies in Africa. The British also had colonies in Africa. It's interesting that this government didn't have a problem negotiating with them in regard to what to do about their Negro problem now that they legally ended slavery. Because I mean, they all knew where we came from. They all knew where they stole our ancestors from. So interesting. I just find it interesting that that part of the history that is connected to Juneteenth that is not told also connects us to the continent and to every African in the diaspora. So once again, we have disabused ourselves of this ridiculous ADOS FBA. Foundational Black Americans, my ass. Solidarity of diasporic Africans. Yes, that's what we are. And our history proves it. So yeah. So, thank you, Leah. The Dutch has Caribbean colonies still to this day, like Aruba. I forget that. I do forget that some Caribbean nations are still colonies of their are still colonies of their European overlords. I don't want to call them masters, but overlords. But that's very true. So on Juneteenth, what should we do? I'm not like telling people don't take a day off. Y'all take that day off. Take it and don't do nothing. I'm serious. We should all get paid, whether we work for the government or not, because we don't work 3.5 centuries for free. Pay us our money. But that's the other part of this that I don't want us to miss with all the cookouts and the ridiculous state-sponsored Juneteenth celebrations that whitewash history and prop Lincoln up as some kind of hero and all this kind of bull. Don't let those people get away with ignoring the debt that is owed to us, not just by this country, but by every country that was complicit in the triangular human trafficking crime against humanity that dropped all of us off around the globe where our ancestors ended up, that got us to where we are throughout the diaspora. That's what I don't want us to forget about Juneteenth, whether you have to work or you're at home or you're doing it, whatever. Don't ever forget that Juneteenth is about the struggle for liberation of African people in this country and around the world. That's what Juneteenth is. All right. So that's Juneteenth. And yes, of course, obviously, as you can see, we are in the studio today to bring you all this good information, all this good socialist information, and happy to do it, actually. So let's talk about Colombia, because yesterday I was not feeling great, and I was sitting at home after after Saturday, went down to the poor people's rally, and Black Alliance for Peace did an action before then, and I hung around to see what was going on a little bit afterward. Ran into some folks who were call center workers at the Maximus call center. Remember, I interviewed a couple of those people on here on Luqman Nation last month and a couple of months ago. Well, they came out. They actually protested in front of Maximus headquarters in Tyson's Corner Friday afternoon, and then I think they were out. Yeah, they were out yesterday. So I got a couple of interviews, some video clips, and I'm going to have them on again because they are continuing to struggle for their rights as workers. So I'm going to have that for you later on today or tomorrow. That should be up here on Black Power Media. But yeah, so Sunday, my knees were like, you did too much. So I stayed home Sunday, and I was just relaxing. And I got a call from my friend and comrade and national organizer John Mubaraka to tell me the fantastic, absolutely wonderful news out of Colombia that I am sure you have heard by now, that the Pacto Histórico, or the historical pact, go away ad, of Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez won the second round election in Colombia. And I got to tell y'all, it's just so annoying that they have a picture of him and not of Francia. But anyway, I got to tell you, when Ajamu called me and told me, I shouted like I found a gold bar in my house. I was so I'm still just so excited about this because the people in Colombia, particularly the working class and the poor and the Afro-Colombians in particular, have been fighting. They have been fighting in the streets. They've been fighting. They have been fighting the government. They have been fighting the military. They have been fighting the paramilitary forces. They've been fighting, and they won. So this is the first time that Colombia will be governed by a leftist president. And there was a lot of what do I want to call it? Election interference by the right wing. There was a lot of violence that was carried out against, particularly Francia Marquez's, against her and her campaign. There was a lot of voter suppression, voter intimidation. They tried very hard to make people afraid to not come out and vote, but they didn't win. They didn't win. So now, while people are celebrating in Colombia, and there are certainly questions, I think valid questions that people are asking and are waiting to see about Petro, because people are saying he's not really that much of a leftist. He's very critical of Hugo Chavez, very critical of the Venezuelan government. Who knows? But we do know that Francia Marquez, as the vice president, being the first Afro-Colombian vice president, she used to be a housekeeper, y'all. She used to clean people's houses for a living. And she is now the vice president of Colombia. And, I'm sorry. I'm not comfortable with not having a picture of her alongside, oh, come on, go away. Not comfortable with not having a picture of the beautiful and fantastic and powerful Francia Marquez. And I do love France 24's headline, from maid to Colombia's first black vice president. You damn right. Just amazing. This is what people power looks like. So they talk a little bit about her. I'm sorry. Let me increase that so you can read it yourself. She was a single mother who worked as a maid before challenging international mining interests. She started out as an environmental activist, um, and she has always been very, very clear that she is intending to govern on behalf of the forgotten Afro-Colombian and indigenous people of Colombia. So I'm just mm, I don't I'm pinching myself because I'm so excited, but I'm also very clear in no, easy. She is not anything like Kamala Harris. She is not. No, she is nothing at all like Kamala Harris. No. Um, it is. I am also clear that now is probably the most dangerous time for the Pacto Historical and for Francia in particular, because what these right wing folks in Colombia don't want, they don't, of course, want a left wing government um, in Colombia at all, but they certainly don't want that black woman telling them what to do. Particularly because now that she is vice president in 4 years, she can run to be president. And if she does, she will win. And they don't want that. The right wing in Colombia does not want that, and the right wing in this country, meaning the entire US government, the whole US government, the Biden administration, and everybody on Capitol Hill, they don't want that to happen either. So now is it's a very exciting and hopeful time, and the people in Colombia take this victory, celebrate the people who were celebrating, struggling with them and in solidarity with them around the world. Take this victory, celebrate, hell yeah! But don't let your guard down. Don't let your guard down, because I bet you the coup plotters not too far from here are plotting a coup right now. So we got to keep our eyes on Colombia, and we got to keep our eyes on our people, Francia, to make sure they are safe and that they can actually be installed in the government and that they can actually govern. So much more to see as that progresses. And let's talk about France. Oy. France, I normally don't like to talk about France. I mean, I kind of don't care about it. But I think it is important, since we are talking about the right wing and their machinations in Colombia. Um, that the right wing in France is not defeated at all. I know people thought that once Marie Le Pen was defeated by um, uh, what's his face? What's his name? Lord have mercy, I can't remember that man's name. Macron, Emmanuel Macron, that the far right in France was defeated. Oh no, 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 no. The French far right has won a record number of seats in the election just yesterday, which would make it the third biggest political force in the French parliament. It will also secure enough seats to form a parliamentary group for the first time since the 1980s, reflecting its solid political foothold and highlighting the success of Marie Le Pen's longtime efforts to moderate her party's images. She's like, look, stop the Nazi salutes, stop just calling immigrants and Muslims dirty names in public. Let's be polite about our right wing bigotry, and maybe we can get some political gains. And that's what they did. They literally put khaki shirts and suits on like they did here. Yeah, that's what they did. Um, so, people thought that after she lost to Macron in the presidential election, and she just kind of wasn't in the public eye, that, oh, the right in France was over, and because there was kind of this infighting between Le Pen and her coalition and this other person, what's his guy's name? Her Eric Zemmour, who is a far right person, just absolutely, believe it or not, worse than she is. He's public with everything that they want. Um, so people thought that there would be some fracturing in the Le Pen party because of that, but no, there's no fracturing at all because of the elections on Sunday. This is the biggest. This group, Le Pen said, this group will be by far the largest in the history of our political family. Her party had achieved three objectives that it had set for itself: to prevent Macron from securing an absolute majority, to continue restructuring France's political landscape, and to build a strong opposition group. Now, that's really interesting because um, their party's objectives, at least the ones that they've stated publicly, weren't even like to attack any particular party. It was just to gain more power. That was their party's objective, their objectives. What do we do to gain more power and legitimacy in the French parliament? And again, this comes to this question of organization for me, or this issue of organization for me, and why we on the left, why do we suck so bad? Why do we suck so bad at that? I mean, because these people are terrible. They're terrible human beings. They have terrible policies. They have terrible politics, and their policies are terrible for human beings. But they can organize around the simplest principles in order to gain political power, in order to enact those terrible policies that are terrible for human beings. What's our problem? See, infighting does get us. It does get us. And there are definitely some things that we have to be very principled in not allowing, but we get sidetracked by stupid stuff. We get sidetracked because people aren't vegans, and we get sidetracked because people aren't Christians, which is because people are Christians, or people are Jewish, or people are religious. And that's wild because most people in the world actually are. Adherents of some kind of faith. And if you think you're going to have this atheist socialist army, you got another thing coming. That's, we just crazy. The things that we will disqualify organizing with folks on. And these genocidal right-wing bigots all over the world are like, do you hate those people in general? Oh, okay. Then okay, come on. Then we can work together. Eventually they'll get around to weeding out the folks among their coalition that they don't like, but come on. And I think I'm glad you brought that up, Ricky. Thank you for saying that, because I need us to be specific. I need us to be specific about what it is we are. I mean, yeah, left is nice, but left of what? Left of what? Left of the Democrats? The Democrats are a right-wing party, so that's not really left. I'm needing us to be comfortable with calling ourselves whatever it is we are. If we're socialists, say you socialist. If you communist, say you communist. I identify as a Christian socialist. I truly am. There actually is an organization called Christian Socialists. And I just joined last month. I was so excited. We need to be clear about what we are and what we are fighting for. And then if people are freaked out by those things, then that's a point of organization for us. That's a point of political education and organization. Oh, well, this is what this means, and this is why it applies to you, and this is why it will make your life better if you were this too. That's what the right wing does. I don't see why that's so hard, but okay. Okay. So yeah, that's France. And I found this interesting. Only because it's macabre and repulsive. And I had to check the date to make sure that it really is current, but it really is. But it's just so like them colonizers. Good grief, y'all. Woo. I mean, why did they still have the man's tooth? Slain Congolese icon's tooth returned to his family decades after his, I hate that they called it a killing, after his assassination. Patrice Lumumba's tooth was in the possession of a former Belgian police commissioner who admitted in a 1999 interview that he took it as a trophy. Oh, Lord. I don't know how they figure this is. While the restitution of Lumumba's tooth Monday may be viewed as a chance for redemption by Belgium amid continuing global outrage over the 2020 killing of George Floyd, again with the connections between our struggles and the struggles of our people around the diaspora, some accuse Brussels of exploiting the occasion without making a solid commitment to rectify its historical wrongs. Well, that's true. I mean, fine, you return the man's tooth to his family because that's the human thing to do. It was unconscionably inhuman to keep his tooth, well, to assassinate the man in the first place. But the fact is, that Belgium is not making any efforts to do anything about the centuries of abuse, exploitation, murder, assassination, and oppression that they have committed against the Congolese people or anywhere else in any of their other colonies on the continent of Africa. So, yes, absolutely return what never belonged to them, what was left of Patrice Lumumba to his family and to his people. But Belgium owes a lot more. And I mean, this, an apology. I think a few weeks ago they issued an apology. They issued an apology for the historic wrongs. But there were no dollar signs or pound sterling or whatever the currency of Brussels, or euros. There were no euros attached to that apology. There was no redistribution of land back to the indigenous people of those former colonies. There was none of that. None of that. No redistribution of the mining wealth. No transfer of the mining contracts to the people. None of that. Just, oh, so sorry for what our ancestors did, that we continue to profit off of, and that continues to keep you poor. That's a good point. I'm tickled every time somebody brings this up. How is Belgium, known for chocolate, And there ain't no cocoa trees in Belgium. There are no cocoa. Swiss, when I found out that chocolate can't be made in Switzerland, because Swiss miss cocoa, right? When I found out that chocolate can't be made in Switzerland and that it is imported from African nations that are colonies of the, I'm like, ain't no cocoa trees in Switzerland. Swiss miss ain't got no cocoa trees. So, mm. So yeah. Monty now said, I just yelled at my friend yesterday about how Switzerland. And that's the thing, like they literally cannot grow. They cannot, they cannot produce the product that they are known for and get rich off of without importing the ingredients for that product from somewhere else. And importing isn't even an accurate word without exploiting the populations in those countries where those resources exist. That's why they had to kill people like Lumumba, and they couldn't let African nations become truly independent, and they sure could not let them become socialist and nationalize any of these industries, because then they would have to actually pay for the resources they need to make their Swiss Miss cocoa. They would much rather go on subjecting the people in Africa to slave labor, to harvest the cocoa, to grow the cocoa trees and harvest the cocoa, kill them when they don't do enough work. Yeah. So think about that next time, you buy somebody um chocolates for Valentine's. The last time somebody gave me chocolates for Valentine's Day, it was before I met Abdus, because he was smart. He was just like, yeah, I ain't never buying damn chocolate for. First of all, because he knew I don't like chocolate, but also because of the political implications. Like, what the hell? And he actually said this one time. He was like, "What the hell would I look like, me, a big ass African man, buying my little African woman some chocolates that were made in some European nation for Valentine's Day? That does not show that I love you. That shows that I love them mugs, and I don't love them." That's why he took your girl to Red Lobster, because he knows it's the cheddar biscuits for me. Um, but yeah, the last time somebody bought me chocolates for Valentine's Day, I was like, yeah, this is nice, but do you know where these come from? And it was the Godiva chocolates. I was like, yeah, do you know where these come from? And they're like, oh, I think Godiva is Belgian or whatever. And like, yeah, but what? Do you think they grow their chocolate in the? Do you know where it comes from? Yeah, we didn't go out again. So, yeah. All right, y'all. This has been a great lunch. I hope you had enough to eat. I hope it was tasty, delicious, and nutritious. I see a lot more of you came and hung out in the lunchroom. AG, what's going on? Red, Latif, Ricky Ryan, of course, Eric Berkeley, what's going on? Zizwe, Easy D, Lisa Catlett, hey, excuse me, James Thompson, Trey Legal, Creative Experiments, all of y'all, Black Nito. I'm guessing that's a play on Magneto, and I dig it. All of y'all, Cinema Gorilla, all of y'all who were late to lunch, I hope that you were able to get enough to eat. And you're full and you enjoyed yourself, and it will carry you through until the next People's Power lunch. I don't know when the next January 6th hearing is. Let me check. Hold on. Let me check and see when I get to talk about that foolishness again, because there is more foolishness to be had. Let's see. When will the next hearing be televised? Tomorrow. Oh, I don't know if I want to watch that one. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and his deputy Gabe Sterling will be testifying. Um, eh, I don't think they're going to expose anything I didn't already know, but because, I'm a journalist and it's my job, I'm going to watch it because I don't want you to. So, thanks a lot, you all. Appreciate you. Hope you have a great rest of your Monday. And until next time, which should be tomorrow at about 1 o'clock, y'all be good to each other. Be very, very good to yourselves. And a luta continua. The struggle continues. But Victoria Acerta, victory is certain. See you next time. Peace.